Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast, where we're joined by your hosts, Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. In each episode, we'll be sharing valuable insights and tips to help you turn your NDIS business into a profitable venture. So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, you've come to the right place. Let's stop surviving and start thriving.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast. I am Paul, and I am joined with my amazing co-host Tania. How are you going?
Hey Paul, I am really well, thank you. Really excited to be talking about all things NDIS registration today. And this special episode is about a very, very hot topic around should I register now? And we have, I think, episode 2 of our podcast. This is episode 46. Episode 2 was around
46.
Should I register? And we gave some advice. But now things have changed in NDIS land, and we thought that we better give some updated information about should people be looking to register in this current climate or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So much has changed. We've had the Royal Commission, which gave a bundle of recommendations and suggestions, and we've had now a task force, and we've had legislation. There's definitely a lot of unease around should I, shouldn't I, is it going to be mandatory? I'd love to know, Tania, you deal in compliance, you help people register, you help them go through audit. What's your hot take here at the moment?
So I feel like it's pretty clear that the government wants providers to all be registered. So I think that it's inevitable at some point this will happen. I just don't know in what time frame that will happen. And so my advice, historically, my advice was that, that to be unregistered really until you have to be registered. And so if you have to be registered and do things like behaviour support or implementing behaviour supports or SDA, then you should register, that you have to register. But I'm not sure that the review has changed my opinion that much. Although, so the NDIS from a registration point of view hasn't always been under the NDIS Commission in this current process. The NDIS Commission has only been around since I think it was 2020, or maybe 2019, sorry. So it before that, the NDIS existed and every state body actually did the registration process separately. And so why I'm saying this is that I went through and registered providers in every single state against their state NDIS rules in a different process. And what I learned from that is that anyone who was an existing provider in that system when the commission came out was given preferential treatment. The current providers transitioned first, and then other providers could join. And we also see that at the moment with the aged care changes. The aged care changes are said to be rolling out July 25 for existing providers. And then over a period of time, new providers can enter the market in the new scheme. So that tells me that I currently know the registration process incredibly well. We know where to stand. We know the costs. I have a lot of certainty that I can, that people can get through the registration process. So what I don't know is what that looks like post the registration task force. And is it going to be easier, or is it going to be harder, or is it going to be, I was going to swear, is it going to be the same thing with a different name? And so that's what I'm unsure about. For me personally, if I was going to register at all, I probably wouldn't wait to know what the new scheme was, although the chances are that it may be easier. I think the chances it's going to be easier might be 20% it's going to be easier. I think no government process is going to be easy. And we've had 20,000 people go through this process, and there's so many consultants who are experienced in taking people through the process, where with a brand new process, I don't think you want to be the first one going through a new process.
Mhm.
And so if you wanted to register, if that was something, or if you did behavior supports, if you ran SIL homes, I would register now. Absolutely. Because it's a limit to your business to grow. If you're not going to be registered, you're going to have to turn participants away, or you're going to have to manage that. So if you're doing behavior supports or SIL homes, absolutely register now. If you're on the fence because you do something like core supports, community access as an example, and you're not sure, if you're going to register anyway, I kind of feel like we know the system now, we know the process. And look, there's 158,000 unregistered providers. I don't know if you want to be in a queue with 158,000 people to get through the
Yeah.
process when they can't handle the current volume.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've had some similar advice on this. With the number of providers that are out there at the moment, people still ask me, like, should I register or not? While we were waiting for this task force, I did say to a few people, just hold off, let's see what's happening. But with the information that's coming out, if it's on your to-do list, like it's what you want to do, you want to be registered, you want to, obviously if you have to be, then go down that path. But if you want to be, then yeah, I think that I would be swinging that way. You may as well get it done now, because if the task force have now said, oh, now we're not so sure, then that's only going to prolong how long any changes might take anyway, which is going to make the whole process probably more difficult later on as they try and change things. And absolutely, do you want to be in a 150,000 person queue? Well, while the queue is still long at the moment and wait times are long, a lot of the providers I'm working with, we're operating as though they are putting the right practices in place. They're putting the right, reporting in place. They're operating as though they have to be. And so building out everything in the meantime so that when they go to do it, it's a much simpler process. And there's only a few things that they need to work on, rather than trying to cram everything into a couple of months, which I'm sure you've probably had to deal with before, Tanya. We were trying to go through that process in a hurry.
Yeah, constantly. And I think that's a really great piece of advice, is to always just act as you are registered, have the same, requirements around forms and systems. Because if you've got, one participant when you're starting out, and if you can start with the right set of forms, then if you're going to audit in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, then you don't actually need to go back and redo all of that paperwork with participants to make sure the files are up to scratch for the audit. And it's funny though, because if you're looking to become an aged care or home care provider at the moment, my advice is actually waiting for the new scheme. And that's because the new scheme is completely different than the current scheme. And, the pitch, or the thing that I say to people is, look, sure, I can charge you a lot of money to do policies against the current system. We know that the system changes July next year, 25. I can write those policies for you now, cost you however much money, and it's a $12,000 application fee. So let's just call it $20,000 of costs. And then come July, all of that needs to go in the bin and you need to start again. It doesn't actually seem to stack up for me. And it almost upsets me when I hear that, like, I have a client at the moment, lovely client. We're going through an NDIS audit, and she paid a registration company to do her NDIS and her home care application. It was a deal. She paid for both of them together.
I'm sure it was a deal.
And yeah, and I'm getting ready to take her through her audit, and she's never run a business in this space. She has a childcare background, which is fine. Similar skills as far as looking after people, but she's never been through an audit. She's never understood this, and so for her, like, I know in my head she's got 1% chance of getting through the home care process because it's so challenging. I haven't said this to her because I don't want to deflate her, and she hasn't paid me to consult to her around aged care. She's asked me to help her prep for audit, so we're doing audit coaching together. And we're getting through there, but it's such a steep curve for her to learn NDIS, let alone expecting her to understand aged care, which is so different. And she spent all of this money on these policies, and I know that she won't be ready before July to submit her application. You need a year's audited financials. She's not going to have that before July. And she won't have a board. She's not a registered nurse. She's not a prime candidate, but someone has sold her this idea that she can do both and packaged it together. I kind of feel like that's
Yeah.
really dishonest and not in her best interest. And so then if I take that advice to NDIS, I think maybe the difference between the two in my head, thinking about it, is that in aged care, we've seen the new legislation. It's been approved. We know the date. We know it's coming. So we know that actually the new process is remarkably easier for providers than it is now. So I can confidently say the next process for you is going to be easier than if you do it today. And doing
Mhm.
that is going to save you money. And then I wouldn't feel right about charging you all this money when I know that the current process is hard and you
Yeah.
might not get through, where the new process I think will be less challenging for you specifically. But in NDIS, I think we really do need more information. The task force, Paul, we were talking about the task force before. They
Yeah.
they have released I think they called it What We Heard video and document.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, that kind of adds a little bit more confusion in many ways, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Look, it's I've seen a few articles where people are sort of making fun that Bill didn't get what he wanted out of the task force and all this sort of thing. But we really need to remember that this is still a government process, and that there's information, there's suggestions, just like the recommendations inside the Royal Commission. They're recommendations, and so recommendations can make effect into legislation. But all of these things just continue to muddy the water for a provider who is going, yeah, but what do I do?
Yeah.
The best thing that any provider, I think, can do at the moment who is considering registration is really understand, what are your goals for this business? Is it that do I need to be registered now? Do I want to be registered now? Where does that take me? What opportunities does that bring? And then understand the process, because as you mentioned before, there are quite a number of consultants that are selling registration on commission. And I have lost count of the number of providers who have called me and said, I'm going through registration at the moment, Paul. I haven't got any clients, but I've got all my policies and procedures here. And when I just asked the one question, why did you decide to get registered? Some of these people have been told flat out lies. Like, for instance, well, you have to be to work in the NDIS. I was like, well, what are you doing? Well, we're just doing community access. Well, unfortunately, you've been sold a lie there, and it's happening consistently. Just fudging of numbers just to get people over the board. Goodness knows how many registrations have gone through for things that people are never going to use. For
So
registration groups
many.
unneeded, and which just cost extra time, extra money. Especially SDA seems to be probably the most popular one where people aren't actually ever going to use it. It's just, it'll be a good idea for the future. I'm sure you've seen your fair share of those, Tania.
Oh, it just makes me so mad. Like, almost my first conversation with any client who wants to work with me is, why do we have these things? How do we remove these things? Like, how do we backpedal here? You've got 10 registration groups and you're doing one. Let's
Yeah,
just do the one, especially if it's a low risk group, a verified group. It's like, if you removed all those, your life would be so simple.
right.
And then they're like, oh, I thought that it was good to have more. It's like, no, more is not better. It's better for the
No.
consultant who charged you a whole lot of money.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
better for the audit body who's just charged you an arm and a leg, but it's actually not better for you. Every registration group you add just adds complication, cost, risk, unless you have a good reason and an actual business case that you can actually take a participant in that area. You just don't
Mm.
need to do it. But yeah, so what are we saying then, Paul? What is our advice to someone who is looking at registration? Are we saying they should register now? Are we saying they should wait for the new scheme for more information? What do you think is the best thing for them to do with all this information we've given them?
Well, look, from my perspective, talking with the businesses I'm seeing, obviously I work with both registered and unregistered providers. The advice from me remains fairly similar. If you are not currently registered and you're operating in the NDIS, work on operating as though you are. So make sure you have all your policies and procedures, you're using them, you have the right things happening at the right times, your systems and processes are in place, you have your feedback channels, you have your risk register, all those sorts of things. But I would be looking at it now going, if this is going to become more and more of a convoluted mess, perhaps it's better that I look into this sooner than later, right? Because if it's not going to change to a clear-cut thing in the next 12 months, then I might be better off just starting the process now and say, not trying to rush it through in the next 2 weeks, but what period of time should this happen, and work towards that? Because I've definitely seen people that have gone through that process in a timely manner, and having someone, for instance, like yourself, Tania, guiding them through the process, it always improves the business, right? People, I don't see people who go through the auditing process make their business worse, right?
Yeah.
And so their systems improve, their processes improve, their staff development improves, their communication internally improves, a lot of the time out of necessity. But I would probably lean towards, maybe it's time to really start looking at it, not in a hurry. You don't need to rush this thing, do it well, but I would decide on a time frame. What about yourself, Tania? You're actually taking people through this.
Yeah. I still like the idea that you operate as you are, like you suggested, operate as if you're registered, get your things in place, but then run your business for at least 6 months, 12 months unregistered. You're allowed to get a real idea about what your business does and what you
Yes.
want to do, so that you don't add things you don't need, you don't throw through the cost. And also, I really do feel like going through the audit process when you're delivering supports is actually easier, because it's not
Yep.
hypothetical. It's not, I will do this one day. It really is, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And you can speak with
Yeah.
confidence because you do it every day. So I really feel it's almost like if you've ever done a job and learnt on the job, and then you've gone to TAFE for RPL, or you've gone to be assessed in the job. Like, everything is easier when you've done it before. You have that mastery, that lived experience that you can do this. So talking about it is a lot easier. Where, if you've ever gone and studied a course for the first time, you spend, the first couple of months of a uni degree or something just trying to figure out, what is this thing? And that's
Yeah.
very much like the audit process. Like, lots of people in my meetings with them just can't put the pieces together. So my advice is, if you're not registered and you aren't operating, to actually test it out for 6 or 12 months. And I feel like,
Absolutely.
time frame wise, we're at least 6 or 12 months from the government even deciding if you should be registered.
Yeah.
So I feel like doing it for 6 or 12 months unregistered and testing it out is still the best advice. Save 10K in profit, because that's how much it'll cost you to go through the process.
Yep.
If you're currently looking if should you be a provider or not. Then if you are a provider who's operating unregistered and you're tossing up, well, should I now register because of this or not? I would say, if you have tested your business model, you're running a profitable business, and you can afford the audit process now, then I would actually say do it now. Not today, but like, put a plan in
Yeah.
place, even 12
Yeah.
months time, like you said, and work towards it, because I have a lot of certainty that any provider who's operating now, who puts in the work, can get through this process. I can tell you what it's going to cost. I can tell you how long it's going to take you.
Yeah.
As soon as a new system comes in, nobody can make you those assurances. Nobody actually knows how to guide you through that process. And so I would much prefer take a whole bunch of people through this system that we know really well. We know what the bad things are about it. We know where the good things are about it. And, but we know how to manage it. We know how to get through. I've never yet had someone not get through the process. And so that tells me that I have certainty in the current system and what it's like. For good or bad, I know what it is. Where the uncertainty of the new system means that it could be 10 times worse. It could be 10 times better. But even if it's 10 times better, it's going to be a really much more tumultuous, stressful process for you because there isn't experienced people in that process. And I don't just mean people like me. I mean, the auditors aren't going to know the new system. The government isn't going to know the new system. So the person assessing you against the new system is brand new. And especially if they say it's mandatory, sure, there'll be a time frame, but everyone in that system will be brand new and you'll be starting from scratch, and it's going to be painful for everyone involved. Like, I remember the first time that I was part of the second lot of NDIS auditors trained. I remember the first 10 audits that I did, nobody even had a template for a report. No one had questions that you were going to ask. We made all of this up on the fly at the expense of the person you're auditing because we're all just making it up. And I feel like with a brand new system, and if you had a look at what the review task force said, they basically said this system's not fixable. We have to start again. And so that means not just a tweak. We're not just talking about adding a registration group or removing an SDA funding category. We're actually talking about throwing it out and starting again. And I'm really worried that is just going to be painful for all involved. So if you're running a business, you've got $10,000 profit you can put towards this. I really do think eventually it will be mandatory. So I would be on the side of give yourself 6 or 12 months, start preparing and go through that process to make sure you're not in a line with 154,000 other people and that you know the process now. We know the good and bad. We can manage that well, where we can't manage something that we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that benchmark that you set there, like having 10K in your bank profit that you're not having to worry about and it's actually there all the time, is a fantastic benchmark to go, right, is this viable for me now? Or is it something I need to work to? Because, for a new provider getting ramped up in this space, if you don't need it, then learn the business. Because yes, we've seen so many businesses who have started thinking it's going to look like this, and then it looks like something completely different 6 months later. They end up doing different services than they initially thought. They end up filling a different need. And so you could get registered for a bundle of things which are almost completely irrelevant 6 months later because you're not actually doing that work, you're doing this work. So absolutely brilliant. I think if you can get to that point of having, yes, we have the money here. Yes, we know what our services are. You can look at the registration categories and go, well, we do that, we do that, we do that. That's what we'll register for. And maybe you were planning on that one other thing. Well, you might put one extra one in. But if you're an existing provider, you're already operating, you have the profit in the bank to be able to do it. Absolutely. If you can go, right, let's make a plan for the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. This is going to be our plan to be registered. We work towards it. We engage someone like yourself, Tania, to be able to come in and help us through that process and get us ready. It's going to be a much, I think, smoother ride than when this transition happens. That's going to be an unpleasant ride, especially if it's going to be, we're looking at an election next year. Task force have given a different opinion on different sorts of things. There's going to be a bit more uncertainty happening. So absolutely, when someone like yourself, Tania, knows the path that someone's going to be walking down and can hold their hand blindfolded, that's probably a really good place to be, rather than everyone's trying to figure out the way down the path blindfolded together.
Yeah. And for me, the reason for the $10,000 is that you don't want an audit to be a drain on your business, because it's not just the initial audit and the initial 10,000. It's actually that you probably need that $10,000 profit every year, if not a little bit more, to maintain the systems, the processes, the documentation. And if you can save $10,000, see how long it took you to save that, and then think about how long is it going to take you to save that again, because you're going to be diverting your resources to compliance or administration or quality, whatever you want to call it. And then you've got an audit every 18 months until this system changes. I usually say until you die, but till we know otherwise. And so you need that extra money regularly, not just once off. I do see quite too often, for my liking, people who are having to choose between business sustainability and registering their business. I have a client at the moment who who can't afford my services, who has said, look, I am stuck here. I have to go through a renewal, but the NDIA hasn't paid me in 3 months.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're going to pay me again, but the commission is sending me letters saying that if I don't go through my renewal audit, they're going to cancel me. So I'm between a rock and a hard place. I deliver services that have to be registered, so I can't let it lapse, but I don't know actually if I'm going to be paid anytime soon. And I really would hate to see someone go through the audit process at the financial cost of them that actually causing the straw that broke the camel's back that actually stops their business running. And that's one of the reasons I'm really not keen on people registering straight up. I really want them to find a business model and think of it like a business, first and foremost, as opposed to go, well, I just am going to be registered because I can have the logo. Really think about things as a business person and do a business case around registration, look at the costs, look at the dollars, and then decide if it's going to be viable for you. And if you've done the exercise that it's a good business case for you and it's going to add things to your business, then make a plan 6, 12, 24 months out from here and just work towards it one piece at a time. I think that
sounds like a bit like a business plan, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's like a business plan.
It's just a little bit like it, right? Understanding where we're going to go, how we're going to build this thing, what should it look like, when should it look like this thing. So yeah, absolutely. Having that really clear idea of where you're going and is this viable for us now? Is it necessary? When will it be necessary? When do we decide that this is really important for us? Yeah, absolutely. Building that plan for where you're at right now. If you're new, run the business, get used to it, learn it, get that 10K in profit, understand how long it took you to do it, understand that's going to be a regular cost that is going to be in your business now. If you're operating and providing your services and you go, this is now our next step, great. Then get things running, create a plan and make it work because it's going to be beneficial. As Tania said, this system is known. It is a known quantity. We know what it takes to get through it. We know how it works. The next thing could be a real pain in the bum until it's sorted out. So it sounds like we've got a couple of similar, but I guess a little bit different ideas from our last episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I think last episode, if we didn't think the system was changing, the advice would be only be registered if it's going to serve you in some way.
Yep.
Look, I'm not arguing at all that the system for registration is broken. I think it's really too hard. It's really too hard. It's really too costly. It's really too administratively heavy. I'm just not guaranteed that the government knows how to make a scheme that's less administratively heavy and less hard. I don't know if it's going to be easier. We just don't have time frames. We just don't have enough information to concretely actually make a decision if the new process is going to be better for us. The thing that stood out for me in the review mostly was that they were suggesting, and actually, look, we've already learned from the task force that actually maybe everything in the review is not going to be agreed with. And we've also seen from some of the minister's actions that he's probably not even going to listen to the review and do whatever he wants that's politically motivated anyway. Maybe that's another topic. But I think what we've kind of learnt is that maybe none of this actually gets traction and maybe we stay where we are. But the government seems to also just love renaming things and repackaging things as well. So it's highly likely that the new scheme will be very similar to the old scheme, just called something different so that Mr. Shorten can feel, I don't know, some kind of pride around it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But sorry, I was going to say one of the things that really stood out to me in the review was that they are seeming to say that if you're doing anything around accommodation, that they're going to make that much harder. So if you were looking to do respite, ILO, SIL, things, STA, MTA, then I would think that the current system is going to be an easier entry for you, because everything seems to be, if you're working in houses, if you're working in 24/7 supports, it's going to be harder. And I kind of agree that actually that is the most complex area of the NDIS, so it does need more regulation. I don't know if there's not enough now. I think it's pretty heavily regulated now, but I think that will remain something that will always be regulated at a higher level. So I think if you're doing SIL now, if you're doing accommodation, if you're doing SIL but you're not doing restrictive practices, so you're just skating under that requirement, I would just do it now and get it out of the way.
Yeah, I could definitely see that becoming one of the main areas that would be changing, because a lot of the information that you see them putting out around, the shonky providers, as they put it, is often around the accommodation sort of space. That seems to be where they're aiming the target at the moment.
Yeah, which is, again, the more to the reason why we've created things like the SIL Summit, so that we can actually educate people on how to actually operate a SIL business. And so if anyone hasn't heard already, Paul and I are talking on the 20th and the 22nd of August in Melbourne and Brisbane to SIL providers, specifically in the SIL Summit. So if you haven't booked tickets, you're welcome to come along and meet with both Paul and I. And we can, even do a selfie with you.
It'll be brilliant. All right.
Cool. I think that's it. I think we've answered the question, have we not?
I think we have. In fact, if you guys are listening and you've got some feedback on us, if you've got questions, please reach out to us through the podcast page, because we'd love to hear what your guys' experience is and how you're seeing it. Because at the end of the day, our information comes from working in this space, having the conversations with providers just like you, and seeing what's happening. So we always love getting feedback, and so definitely hope to see you at the SIL Summit and see how things are going.
Yeah, and also we've never actually done this before, but it really does help us if you like the podcast and subscribe. So if you've been enjoying it and you like our 46 episodes we've put together for you, it really helps if you like and subscribe. So please do that also.
Please do. Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, that's it for us today. And our next episode, we're going to be talking about pivoting your NDIS business. There are so many options available to you, and people are looking at what else they could use their services for, and how they could enter into different spaces, whether in the NDIS or in different services as well. So we'll be looking at that on our next episode.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks very much, everyone. See you later.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast with Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. We hope you found today's episode informative and valuable. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, and share it with others who could benefit from our insights. Until next time, keep thriving.